The ocean doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're a legend. It doesn't care if you've spent your entire life reading its moods, understanding its rhythms, respecting its power. On June 23, 2024, the Pacific Ocean would remind the world of this brutal truth in the most devastating way possible. A perfect Sunday afternoon in paradise. Crystal blue waters stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The kind of day that draws surfers from around the globe to Hawaii's legendary breaks. But beneath those pristine waters, something ancient and predatory was stirring. Something that would turn paradise into a nightmare in a matter of minutes. At exactly 12:58 p.m., a 911 call would shatter the peaceful Sunday silence, the caller's voice trembling with shock and horror. "There's been a shark attack," they would whisper. "Multiple bites. It's really bad." The victim? Tamayo Perry, 49 years old, pipeline legend, ocean safety lifeguard. A man who had dedicated his entire existence to the very waters that would ultimately claim his life. This is the story of how paradise became a predator, how a perfect day became a perfect storm of terror, and how one of Hawaii's most beloved watermen took his final fatal swim into the jaws of death itself. But to understand how this tragedy unfolded, we need to go back to where it all began, back to the east side of Oahu, where a young boy first fell in love with the ocean that would one day betray him. April 15th, 1975. Oahu's east side welcomed a baby boy who would grow up to become a legend. Tamayo Perry entered the world with salt water seemingly already flowing through his veins. His mother, Marlene Louise Kai Cunningham, would later say she knew from the moment he could walk that he belonged to the ocean. The boy was fearless, she remembered. While other kids played with toys, Tamayo played with waves. By age 7, young Tamayo was already paddling out into breaks that terrified grown men. The pipeline, that monstrous, bone-crushing barrel of water that had claimed careers and lives, called to him like a siren song. Most people look at pipeline and see death. Tamayo looked at it and saw home. His childhood was spent studying the water with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He would sit on the beach for hours, watching the waves form, break, and reform, learning their patterns, understanding their language. His brothers, Mario Gardner and Mark Gardner, would later recall how Tamayo could predict exactly when and where each wave would break, as if he had some supernatural connection to the ocean's rhythm. He didn't just surf, Mario would say years later. He communicated with the water. It was like watching someone have a conversation in a language the rest of us couldn't understand. By his teenage years, Tamayo had developed something special, something that set him apart from every other surfer paddling out into Hawaiian waters. He had learned to read pipeline like others read books. Every subtle shift in the water's color told him a story. Every change in the wind's direction gave him information. He was becoming one with the very force of nature that would eventually destroy him. The local surf community began to take notice. Here was a kid who could handle barrels that sent seasoned professionals running for shore. He had a style that was pure poetry in motion, influenced by legends like Jerry Lopez and Tom Carroll, but uniquely his own. Smooth, calculated, fearless. But it wasn't just his surfing that made people love Tamayo Perry. It was his spirit, his infectious smile, his genuine love for everyone around him. Even as his reputation grew, even as sponsors came calling, even as the surfing world began to recognize his talent, Tamayo remained the same humble, joyful person who had first fallen in love with the waves as a 7-year-old boy. His mother, Kai, would watch from the beach, pride and terror battling in her heart, as her son danced with death in the pipeline barrels. Every time he went out there, she confided to friends, "I said a prayer, because I knew the ocean could take him from me at any moment." She had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. 1999, Pipeline Masters Trials, the most prestigious surfing competition in the world, the event that separates the pretenders from the legends. 24-year-old Tamayo Perry paddled out that day, carrying the dreams of his family, his community, and his own burning ambition. The waves were massive. thundering barrels that seemed to swallow surfers whole before spitting them out like unwanted prey. One by one, world-class surfers were eliminated. One by one, dreams were crushed against the reef, but not Tamayo's. He won. Against all odds, against international competition, against waves that seemed determined to destroy anyone brave enough to challenge them, Tamayo Perry emerged victorious. The crowd erupted. His mother cried. His brothers screamed with joy. But Tamayo just smiled that infectious smile and paddled back out for more. "I could bang it out with the world's best," he would say later, with characteristic humility, masking absolute confidence. But for me, it was never about beating anyone else. It was about the conversation between me and the wave. Success followed success. 5th place at Billabong Pro T Hupu, one of the most dangerous surf breaks on Earth. By 2005, he was being recognized as one of the most dominant pipeline specialists of all time. But Tamayo's ambitions extended beyond just surfing. Hollywood came calling. His natural charisma and authentic water skills made him perfect for ocean-based films. Pirates of the Caribbean, On Stranger Tides cast him as a buccaneer, a role that seemed tailor-made for his free-spirited personality. Blue Crush featured him playing himself, bringing his real-life legend to the silver screen. Television wanted him too. Lost, Hawaii 5-0, Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. Wherever directors needed someone who could make the ocean look both beautiful and dangerous, they called Tamayo Perry. He was living proof that you could make it in Hollywood without losing your soul to the mainland. But through all the fame, all the recognition, all the opportunities to leave Hawaii behind, Tamayo never forgot where he came from. The East Side, the pipeline, the community that had raised him and shaped him into the man he had become. "Success is good," he told a local reporter in 2010. "But success without giving back is just selfishness. This island made me who I am. These waters taught me everything I know. I owe everything to this place." Little did anyone know that in just 14 years, these very waters would demand the ultimate payment for all they had given him. 2016. After decades of taking from the ocean, Tamayo Perry decided it was time to give back. He joined Honolulu Ocean Safety as a lifeguard, trading his celebrity status for the simple, noble calling of protecting others in the waters he knew better than anyone alive. The decision surprised many in the surfing world. Here was a man who could have continued his Hollywood career, who could have made millions in endorsement deals, who could have retired to a comfortable life of sponsored surf trips around the globe. Instead, he chose to spend his days watching over swimmers and surfers, ready to risk his own life to save theirs. "That's just who Tamayo was," recalls Kurt Lager, acting Honolulu Ocean Safety Chief. He didn't see it as stepping down from anything. He saw it as stepping up to his highest calling. Protecting people in the ocean wasn't a job for him. It was a sacred duty. His colleagues quickly learned that having Tamayo Perry on their team was like having a guardian angel with fins. His ability to read water conditions was supernatural. He could spot a struggling swimmer from impossible distances. He could predict when conditions were turning dangerous before anyone else even noticed a change. But it was his personality that truly set him apart. That infectious smile that had charmed Hollywood producers now comforted panicked tourists. That gentle confidence that had helped him conquer pipeline now reassured frightened children taking their first swimming lessons. That genuine love for people that had made him a beloved figure in the surf community now made him a hero to countless beachgoers who never even knew his name. Tamayo was a lifeguard loved by all, Lager would later say. He's well known on the North Shore. He's a professional surfer known worldwide. But more than that, Tamayo's personality was infectious, and as much as people loved him, he loved everyone else more. The irony was heartbreaking. Here was a man who had spent 8 years of his life dedicated to saving others from the ocean's dangers. A man who understood better than anyone the risks that lurked beneath the surface. A man whose job it was to recognize and prevent exactly the kind of tragedy that would ultimately claim his own life. His wife, Emilia Perry, herself an accomplished surfer and bodyboarder, supported his decision completely. She understood that for Tamayo, Protecting others in the water wasn't just a career choice. It was who he was at his core. A guardian, a protector, a man who had been given extraordinary gifts by the ocean and felt obligated to use those gifts in service of others. He saved so many people over the years, Emilia would reflect. Families went home intact because Tamayo was watching over them. Children learned to love the ocean safely because he was there to guide them. He gave everything he had to keeping people safe in the water. Everything except his own life. That the ocean would demand as its final payment. To understand what happened on June 23, 2024, you need to understand the creature that killed Tamayo Perry. Not just any shark, but the apex predator of Hawaiian waters, the tiger shark. These aren't the great whites that terrorize California beaches. These are something far more dangerous, more unpredictable, more perfectly designed for killing. Tiger sharks can reach lengths of 18 feet and weights of over 2,000 pounds. Their jaws contain rows of serrated teeth designed to tear through flesh, bone, and even turtle shells with horrifying efficiency. But their size isn't what makes them so deadly. It's their behavior. Unlike great whites, which tend to attack from below in a single devastating bite, tiger sharks are different. They're curious. They investigate. They circle. They test their prey with multiple bites, each one more destructive than the last. They don't kill quickly. They kill methodically. Hawaiian waters have always been tiger shark territory. These creatures patrol the same reefs where surfers play, hunt in the same channels where swimmers cool off, and feed in the same areas where lifeguards like Tamayo Perry keep watch. For the most part, humans and sharks coexist peacefully. Attacks are rare. Fatal attacks are almost unheard of. Almost. Goat Island, or Mokuauia as locals call it, sits off the northeast shore of Oahu like a sleeping giant. The area isn't typically considered high risk for shark encounters. The waters are relatively shallow, the currents predictable, the visibility usually excellent. It's the kind of place where experienced watermen like Tamayo feel completely at home. But the ocean keeps its secrets. Beneath the surface, invisible to human eyes, ancient hunting patterns play out daily. Tiger sharks follow prey migrations, water temperature changes, and tidal movements that scientists are only beginning to understand. They appear where they're least expected, strike when guards are lowest, and vanish back into the blue as mysteriously as they arrived. On June 23, 2024, something drew at least one massive tiger shark to the waters around Goat Island. Something made it hungry. Something made it aggressive. Something turned a peaceful Sunday surf session into a nightmare that would shock the world. The warning signs were there, as they always are. Local fishermen had reported unusual shark activity in the area over the previous weeks. Fishing boats had seen large shadows moving beneath the surface. Some surfers had mentioned feeling watched while in the water. That primitive, instinctual fear that our ancestors developed to survive in a world full of predators. But on a perfect Sunday in paradise, who pays attention to such warnings? Who wants to believe that death might be circling just beneath their feet? Tamayo Perry had survived a freak accident that turned into a near-fatal experience years earlier. He knew the ocean could kill him. He respected its power. He understood its dangers. But like all true watermen, he had made peace with the risk. He had accepted that the ocean might one day claim him. He just never imagined it would happen like this. Sunday, June 23, 2024. 11:30 a.m. The sun blazed down on Oahu's northeast shore like a golden benediction. Perfect offshore winds groomed the waves into crystalline barrels, the kind of conditions that make surfers around the world weep with envy, the kind of day that reminds you why people call Hawaii paradise. Tamayo Perry loaded his board into his truck with the same casual efficiency he'd performed thousands of times before. At 49, he moved with the fluid grace of someone who had spent his entire life in and around water. His wife Emilia watched from the doorway, as she always did. A ritual of love and fear that had played out countless times over their years together. "Be careful out there," she called, the same words she'd spoken before every surf session. "Always am," he replied, flashing that infectious smile that had charmed Hollywood and comforted countless swimmers over the years. "See you tonight." It would be the last conversation they would ever have. The drive to Goat Island took 20 minutes through the kind of scenery that makes postcards seem inadequate. Lush green mountains rising toward cloudless skies. Crystal blue water stretching to the horizon. Palm trees swaying in gentle trade winds. Paradise in every direction. Tamayo pulled into the parking area at 12:15 p.m. A few other surfers were already suiting up, checking the conditions, waxing their boards. Casual nods and friendly waves were exchanged. The universal language of the surfing brotherhood. Everyone recognized the pipeline legend, but in the water, reputation mattered less than respect for the ocean and each other. The paddle out was routine. Tamayo's powerful strokes carried him through the channel with the efficiency of someone who had made this journey thousands of times. The water was pristine, visibility stretching down 30 feet or more. Tropical fish darted between coral formations. Sea turtles glided past like ancient spirits. Everything appeared peaceful, perfect, normal. He reached the lineup at 12:45 p.m. A few other surfers were already positioned, waiting for the right wave. The sets were consistent, solid 6 to 8 foot faces with the occasional larger wave keeping everyone honest. Good surf, but nothing extraordinary, nothing that would require the legendary skills that had made Tamayo Perry famous. For the next hour, he surfed with the same joy and mastery that had defined his entire life, carving perfect lines across pristine wave faces, pulling into barrels with casual confidence, sharing waves with the younger surfers, offering encouragement and advice between sets, living proof that age and experience could triumph over youthful enthusiasm. The other surfers would later describe those final waves with heartbreaking detail. How smooth Tamayo looked, how happy he seemed, how perfectly he read each wave, positioning himself with the precision that comes only from decades of experience. At approximately 12:58 p.m., Tamayo caught what would be his final wave. A beautiful right-hand barrel that offered the kind of tube ride that still brought him joy after all these years. Witnesses watched him disappear into the green room, emerge with arms raised in celebration, kick out cleanly behind the wave. He was smiling. Of course he was smiling. Tamayo Perry was doing what he loved most, in the place he loved most, on a perfect day in paradise. He paddled back toward the lineup, completely unaware that death was rising from the depths below. What happened next would be seared into the memories of everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. The first indication of danger came not from sight, but from sound. A thrashing in the water that was all wrong, not the playful splash of a dolphin or the gentle disturbance of a sea turtle surfacing. This was violent, chaotic, desperate. Jake Morrison, a 26-year-old surfer from California, was the closest to Tamayo when it began. "I heard this noise," he would tell investigators later, his voice still shaking days after the attack. Like someone was beating the water with a baseball bat, over and over. And there was shouting, but not normal shouting. It was terror. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes stretched into an eternity of horror for everyone who witnessed them. The tiger shark, later estimated to be between 14 and 16 feet long, had approached from directly below. The first bite caught Tamayo completely off guard, the massive jaws clamping down on his right leg with bone-crushing force. The impact drove him underwater, his surfboard spinning away like a discarded toy. He fought back. Of course he fought back. This was Tamayo Perry, pipeline legend, ocean safety expert, a man who had dedicated his life to conquering the most dangerous waters on Earth. But this wasn't pipeline. This wasn't a wave he could read and ride and master. This was a 2,000-pound killing machine operating on pure predatory instinct. The second bite came as Tamayo fought to reach the surface. The shark's jaws found his torso, serrated teeth tearing through flesh and muscle with surgical precision. The water around him turned crimson, a spreading cloud of red that would haunt the nightmares of every witness for years to come. He was fighting so hard, Morrison recalled. Even with that thing trying to kill him, he was fighting. punching at it, trying to get away, but it was so big, so powerful, and there was so much blood. The third bite was the worst. As Tamayo somehow managed to break free and begin swimming toward shore, the shark struck again. This time the massive jaws closed around his midsection, lifting him partially out of the water before dragging him back down into the depths. By now, the other surfers in the lineup were screaming. Some were paddling frantically toward shore. Others were trying to get closer to help, though what they could do against a creature of such size and fury was unclear. Everyone was yelling at once, warnings, prayers, desperate attempts to scare the shark away. The attack ended as suddenly as it had begun. The massive tiger shark, perhaps satisfied with the damage it had inflicted, simply vanished back into the blue depths from which it had emerged. The thrashing stopped. The terrible sounds ceased. The water began to still. But Tamayo Perry was gone. His body floated motionless on the surface, the water around him stained with his life's blood. The man who had spent 49 years mastering the ocean had been conquered by it in less than 2 minutes. The legend who had survived Pipeline's most violent barrels had been broken by nature's most perfect predator. Jake Morrison was the first to reach him. "I knew he was gone," he said. "But I had to try, I had to do something. This was Tamayo Perry. This was a legend. This was someone's husband, someone's brother, someone's hero. I couldn't just let him float there." With the help of 2 other surfers, Morrison managed to get Tamayo's body onto his board. The paddle to shore was the longest 20 minutes of their lives, each stroke haunted by the knowledge of what they were carrying. Each moment shadowed by the fear that the shark might return. The 911 call came in at 12:58 p.m., just as the attack was ending. The caller's voice was barely controlled panic, words tumbling over each other in desperate urgency. "There's been a shark attack at Goat Island. A bad one. Really bad. The victim, I think he's dead, multiple bites. There's so much blood, you need to get here now." Within minutes, the quiet Sunday calm around Malaikahana Beach was shattered by the wail of sirens. Emergency vehicles converged from all directions. Paramedics, fire department, ocean safety personnel, police. The kind of massive response that Hawaiian emergency services pray they'll never have to deploy. The first responders arrived to find a scene that would haunt them for the rest of their careers. Tamayo's fellow lifeguards, men and women he had worked alongside for 8 years, people who had become his ocean safety family, were using jet skis to bring his body to shore. Their faces told the story before any words were spoken. This wasn't a rescue, this was a recovery. Paramedic Sarah Chen had been working Hawaiian beaches for 15 years. She had seen drownings, heart attacks, diving accidents, and every other tragedy the ocean could inflict on human beings. But she had never seen anything like this. The damage was extensive, she would report, her clinical language barely masking the horror of what she had witnessed. Multiple shark bites covering the victim's legs, torso, and arms. Massive trauma consistent with a large predator attack. No signs of life upon our arrival. The pronouncement of death was a formality. Everyone who saw Tamayo's body knew that no medical intervention could have saved him. The tiger shark had been too large, too powerful, too thorough in its attack. The ocean's apex predator had claimed another victim, and this time it was someone the entire Hawaiian community knew and loved. Kurt Lager, acting chief of Honolulu Ocean Safety, arrived as his team was bringing Tamayo's body onto the beach. The sight of one of his own lifeguards, a man he had worked with, laughed with, trusted with the lives of countless beachgoers, lying motionless on the sand was almost too much to bear. Tamayo was a lifeguard loved by all, he would say later, his voice breaking with emotion. He's well known on the North Shore. He's a professional surfer known worldwide. Tamayo's personality was infectious, and as much as people loved him, he loved everyone else more. The beach was quickly secured. Crime scene tape fluttered in the trade winds as investigators began the grim process of documenting the attack. Photographs were taken, measurements were recorded, witness statements were collected, all the cold, clinical procedures that follow sudden death, even when that death occurs in paradise. But beyond the official response, something else was happening. Word was spreading through the tight-knit Hawaiian surfing community like wildfire. Text messages, phone calls, social media posts, all carrying the same devastating news. Tamayo Perry was gone. The pipeline legend was dead. The beloved lifeguard had been killed by the very ocean he had dedicated his life to protecting. The shock was palpable. This was a man who had survived the most dangerous waves on Earth. A waterman who understood the ocean better than almost anyone alive. Someone who had made his living reading water conditions, predicting dangers, keeping others safe from harm. If Tamayo Perry could be killed by a shark attack, then no one was truly safe. By evening, the beach at Malaekahana had become an impromptu memorial. Flowers appeared first, then surfboards standing upright in the sand like monuments. Lei were draped over makeshift crosses. Candles flickered in the ocean breeze. The entire Hawaiian surfing community was mourning the loss of one of their own. The news of Tamayo Perry's death sent shockwaves far beyond the beaches of Hawaii. Within hours, the story had spread around the globe, carried by news outlets, social media, and the international surfing community's extensive network of connections. Hollywood mourned one of its own. The entertainment industry had lost not just a talented performer, but a genuine waterman who had brought authenticity to every ocean-based production he touched. Tributes poured in from directors, actors, and crew members who had worked with Tamayo over the years. "He was the real deal," said a Pirates of the Caribbean producer who had worked closely with Tamayo. "In a business full of pretenders, Tamayo was authentic. He lived the life he portrayed on screen. His death is a tremendous loss to everyone who knew him." The surfing world was devastated. Magazine editors struggled to find words adequate to describe the loss of such a legendary figure. Stab magazine called him one of the most durable and committed pipeline specialists of all time. Surfer magazine described him as a waterman's waterman, someone who embodied everything beautiful about surfing culture. Professional surfers from around the globe shared their memories and condolences. Kelly Slater, 11-time world champion, posted a heartfelt tribute. Tamayo was pure aloha spirit. He represented everything good about surfing and Hawaii. The ocean took back one of its greatest sons. But perhaps the most devastating impact was felt by those who knew Tamayo personally. His wife Amelia was inconsolable. The woman who had watched him paddle out thousands of times, who had always feared this might happen but never truly believed it would, was now facing a reality too horrible to comprehend. "He died doing what he loved," she told friends through her tears. "But that doesn't make it hurt any less. He was supposed to come home. He always came home." His brothers, Mario Gardner and Mark Gardner, struggled to process the loss of the sibling who had been larger than life itself. "Tamayo wasn't just our brother," Mario said. "He was our hero. Watching him surf was like watching someone walk on water. We thought he was invincible." The Honolulu Ocean Safety Department was in mourning. 8 years of working alongside Tamayo had created bonds that went far deeper than professional relationships. These were people who had trusted him with their lives, who had depended on his expertise and experience, who had come to think of him as immortal in the water. "We've lost more than a colleague," said one lifeguard who requested anonymity. "We've lost our mentor, our inspiration, our reminder of why we do this job. Tamayo saved so many lives over the years. It's not fair that we couldn't save his." Mayor Rick Blangiardi issued an official statement that captured the community's sense of loss. "Tamayo was a legendary waterman and highly respected. This is a tragic loss for all of Hawaii." The statistics surrounding Tamayo's death only made it more shocking. This was the first fatal shark attack off Oahu in more than 2 decades. Fatal shark attacks in Hawaii are incredibly rare. Only 9 had occurred since 1995. The odds of being killed by a shark in Hawaiian waters are literally 1 in millions. But statistics provided no comfort to those mourning Tamayo Perry. He hadn't been just another statistic. He had been a husband, a brother, a friend, a protector, a legend. He had been someone who made the world a little brighter, a little safer, a little more filled with joy and aloha spirit. The investigation into his death would continue for weeks, but the conclusions were inevitable. This had been a rare, unpredictable encounter with a large tiger shark. There was no human error, no safety violation, no preventable cause. Sometimes the ocean simply claims its own, regardless of their skill, experience, or love for the water. In the end, Tamayo Perry's death stands as both tragedy and testament. Tragedy, because the world lost someone truly special. A man who embodied the best of Hawaiian culture, who dedicated his life to protecting others, who found joy in every wave and shared that joy with everyone around him, but also testament to a life lived fully, authentically, courageously. Tamayo Perry died doing what he loved in the place he loved on a perfect day in paradise. He never compromised his values, never lost his aloha spirit, never stopped giving back to the ocean and community that had given him so much. The tiger shark that killed him was simply following its nature. It wasn't evil or malicious. It was a wild predator doing what millions of years of evolution had programmed it to do. In the end, Tamayo would have understood this. He would have forgiven the ocean for taking his life, just as he had forgiven it for all the beatings it had given him over the years. His legacy lives on in every life he saved as a lifeguard, every young surfer he inspired, every person who learned to love the ocean through his example. He showed the world that it's possible to be both tough and tender, legendary and humble, fearless and respectful. The waves at Pipeline still break with the same power and beauty they always have. The ocean continues its eternal rhythm, indifferent to human joy and sorrow alike. But those who knew Tamayo Perry see him in every perfect barrel, feel his presence in every sunset surf session, hear his laughter in the sound of waves breaking on the reef. He lived as he died, completely committed to the ocean. In the end, perhaps that's not tragedy at all. Perhaps that's the most beautiful way a waterman can go, claimed by the very force that gave his life meaning, returned to the source of all his joy. The ocean took Tamayo Perry on June 23, 2024. But it could never take what he represented, the pure spirit of aloha, the joy of riding waves, the importance of protecting others, and the courage to live fully in the face of danger. His last swim may have ended in tragedy, but his legend will ride the waves forever.